Online for Authors, where I, Terry M. Brown, author of character-driven fiction and host of the podcast, introduce readers to characters they'd love to invite to lunch by interviewing authors, discussing their books, learning about the writing process, and even, on occasion, chatting live with a panel of authors to discuss topics relevant to both readers and writers. My guest today on Online for Authors is William Yeske, military veteran and author of the book Damn the Valley. I found Damn the Valley to be a tough read because it detailed the tour of two Fury into Afghanistan. Half the team was wounded or killed. Those who survived now live with the consequences of what they did and saw while protecting our country. Will was one of the members of the team, and though he states that he's not an author, he believed that the story, one the media barely mentioned, needed to be told. Why? So others would know of the sacrifices made and that these sacrifices would not be in vain.
Well, hello, everyone. Welcome to Online for Authors. Today, I have William Yeske, the author of Damn the Valley. Welcome, Will.
How you doing? It's good to be here.
Oh, I'm so glad to have you. Just to kind of give the listeners an idea of what we're going to be talking about today, give me your elevator pitch for what Damn the Valley is about.
Oh, man. So Damn the Valley was a book about a combat deployment I was on with the 82nd Airborne back in 2009 to 2010 time period. So this was during the Kandahar surge. And, on this particular deployment, it's conventional with a really good unit, though. The 82nd Airborne kind of sets itself apart from the rest. But even that being said, is that, we suffered a 52% casualty rate during that deployment, which is something that's just, it's unheard of. And really the work that we did over there and the different experiences that we had, it really left such a mark on everybody. This thing was so easy for me to write just because of that story was in there. And after, 13 years of it being locked away, it just kind of flowed out. So what you have in front of you is, the book Damn the Valley, but there's also been really, I've tried to, during it, just make an all-encompassing, this has turned into something to where I've had to hold myself to the fire, but it's been so worth it, in getting the DoD approval process, in pushing stuff forward to the museum that I was just at this last weekend. So, people can actually see the things that are discussed in this book in person, and then the massive undertaking of the social media for the last year. We've been posting daily since February, and people are like, where did all this stuff come from? I've literally been contacted by units that were there prior us and after us, and they were just like, whoa, like the amount, I know these places, I've seen these places, like, when were you there? And it's captured a lot of attention from people, but really it's just been the guys have pushed things forward to help this out. Like, in the very beginning, initially, I asked them, it was like, hey, we just got a book deal for this thing, and they're asking for 30 pictures. And I said, yes, but what they don't know is I don't have anything, so it's going to take you guys. I don't have anything. I had maybe 5 grainy Facebook pictures, and I had nothing. And these guys just stepped up in droves, and they're the ones who have enabled it. They've made this happen. And really, even though my name's on the cover, like every single one of them, and you can even see it in the book. Like I tried to, I think the only picture of me is the author picture, and I show up in one of the other ones, but I really tried to put them at the forefront and be like, look, this is these guys' story. Like, I was just there, but like, this is us. Like, and
Right.
This is what happened.
Right.
And it's
more of a collective story. It's more of a collective than a you story. This isn't just about Will.
No, it's not. And what made it easy to write is the initial manuscript was just Will. It was from my point of view.
Right.
And it follows that stream of consciousness. But like, when you started adding everything in, it became something really special. And I really think that that's where a lot of it shined through. I mean, I had feedback from the publisher, like some of these stories, when you started adding in these other guys, this is when it really came to life for us. And I agree. I think that once that became there, it really pushed me to hold myself to the fire of making sure that this was something that was a great representation of these guys and this great unit and this great portion of my life. That it may have been to an extreme and stuff, but again, you have these traumatic moments, and delving into those, I mean, you have 125 guys go into this particular valley. You're going to have 125 different stories.
Right.
And
Exactly.
the thing is they're all right. Every single one of them is correct because of it's the perception on how these people experienced it. So getting to that accurate picture in there, it was a challenge, but we pushed it through and we put it through the process and stuff. And I mean, the guys have gone through this. Most of the guys that were there have been through the manuscript and they helped me develop it, and they are in agreement. Like, hey, this is the picture. And out of this, quite honestly, this is history in front of us, and it's wild to have been part of putting it together.
Yeah, it does sound that way. So one of my thoughts as I was reading it, and you alluded to it, was that you had to get DoD approval. And I was
Yes.
wondering what kind of approval you had to get. My husband is a 25-year military veteran. And I asked him, I said, like, can he just write this? And he said, no, I'm pretty sure he's going to have to get some kind of approval. He said, unless things have changed, he got out in 96. He said, unless things have changed substantially since then. And so what was that like, trying to get approval for this book?
Well, along those lines, let me back up just really quick and segment into some of what you'll see out there today as far as military books. We have so much stuff out there, and I'm not marginalizing them or discounting them and whatnot. We have a lot of books that come out of the special operations community. It's almost like the market's just saturated with them. And what a lot of people realize is those don't go through the DoD approval process. Matter of fact, after getting back what I did from mine, I know for a fact that stuff is not DoD approved because they would never some of the things said in there. So it's really considered military fiction. And even if it is, it hasn't been through that process. So where this is, and I have a few of them here with me and stuff. And you know what, let me just hold up the actual, these green NCO books. And it's going to be weird because of the green screen behind me. But so my old platoon sergeant came out and brought forward, there's grid coordinates in there. There's weapon serial numbers and stuff. There is the detailed, accurate accounts put in there, as well as everything from the guys. But when you reach out to the DoD, you have to, first get that, hey, I have a manuscript coming forward. This is the time period. Because when you're over there, you sign NDAs.
Right.
A lot of, and it's like, hey, for 50 years or whatever, I can't remember what the actual number is, but you ain't talking about it. So really you have to bring this stuff forward and say, hey, this is what we got. And a lot of people, when I came back, and even the publisher was like, don't worry about that side yet. And I just got that feeling like, I'm going to put it out there. I'm going to start the process. And once I started it, I think it was from the initial email to the end of everything, it only took 3 months. And I was surprised. No, I was like, oh, why doesn't everybody do this? This is easy. Well, then I started getting feedback that, hey, that's 3 months. Like, what? That's not normal. What are you talking about? It's taken me 18 months in this. So then it kind of made me think all right, let me go back and see what the deal is. And I did. I contacted the reviewer and stuff. I'm like, what's your previous background? What does this normally take? And he's like, well, all right, I'm former infantry. And I'm like, okay. And he's like, look, man, I really like this book and it really resonated with me. So we kind of push this to the front. Yeah. So, but you have to put in, you send an initial email and there's two people. There's the initial one that's usually a prior service member. And then you have your actual person with access to the red side stuff. And they look through to where the military person might flag a few things.
Okay.
And then that reviewer that has access to all of your, there's the sipper and the nipper side. So like you'll have a non-classified end of things and then the red side, and they don't want people putting out red side stuff. So, I mean,
Exactly.
I got the manuscript back with the black lines through it, and we were able to work around it for the most part on that. Just take away the identifiers from the helicopters. There's certain things that people would be like, aha.
I know who that is, or I know where that was, or I know. Yeah.
Exactly. And it's
Too
mainly,
specific.
people know this stuff exists, but it's mainly placing certain units within certain areas at times that they don't want it to become a thing. So I get that. I
Right.
understand that.
Right.
But it was wild. It was wild to get that manuscript back with the lines and just see that and go, oh, wow. Like, I guess I did see a little bit more than I thought.
Yeah, I'm sure it was like, oh wow, I'm not supposed to know that, or not that I'm not supposed to know it, but I'm not supposed to be saying it out loud anywhere.
Exactly.
Okay, good to know. Good to know.
Exactly.
So the title "Damn the Valley," you explained it a little bit in a press release that you sent to me, but why don't you tell the listeners why the title "Damn the Valley"?
So yeah, Damn the Valley was one of the things that it came out to where even the publisher, they're like, we're not really sure about this title. And I'm like, look, guys, the cover stays, the title stays. Those are two things that are really near and dear. And once I explained to them, that Damn the Valley was a phrase that started being said. It really started being said while we were there. I mean, it's on some hats that were made up, and it was on one of the plaques outside. And it's really something that's been echoed all the way back from Vietnam days. I mean, those valleys, we don't want to be caught in the valley, as a fighting force. You want to be on that high ground.
Right.
And this really just exemplifies that feeling. Like whenever we would lose somebody there, or later on to suicide, the phrase was uttered like, damn the valley. And hashtagged and posted too. Like people are posting things about that, and it's damn the valley or TTV. And it just became a thing, but so much to where the family readiness groups of the soldiers that served in there, it kind of became something that dredged up old memories from them. And they were like, hey, you need to stop saying this. Like, but ultimately it was like, hey, this is our story too. And we really think that this is part of it. We have this feeling of, damn the valley and that place that took these lives and, brought those extremities there. But it's also a hell of a story. And really, I don't think there's anything else that could have been the title for this once it was done. It really belonged in there.
Yeah, I think it kind of sets the tone from the beginning. I mean, even as someone who's never been in the military, who doesn't, has never seen a deployment like this, or you read the title, that it's not, the pages inside are not going to be pretty. Okay.
Yeah. You're not going into this light situation.
No,
for
sure. This is not some fluffy romance. I mean, you're going to see, I think that, from the title, you're going to see things. So we talked about the DoD approval, and you talked about how you had a lot of help from members of your unit.
Droves. Yeah.
Was everyone positive about you writing, or did you have some people who were not?
There's still a few. There's still a few that are out there and they're not sure what to think. And I think that they're kind of like, they're hanging back. They're at least, instead of, speaking out angrily, they're at least holding their anger back and going, all right, let me first read this. Some of them haven't read it yet. Some of them haven't been able to bring themselves to read it quite yet. I know some of them, I tried to send out anybody who asked me for an advanced PDF. Like once I had the final back, I sent it out. Anybody from first platoon or that I talked to in certain situations, they had a copy. I mean, there was segments from the very beginning that were shot out to the various people. And I tried to compartmentalize it and then grow it out, just because I wanted to be able to keep these portions, organic, and I didn't want others that hadn't been there to see it yet.
Right.
But once it was complete, it went out to everybody, and I'm like, hey, look at it. But the scary part, on my end too, is that I know for me, there was chapters that I wrote, with tears flowing down my face kind of thing. And I knew that I had to push through that side. And I'm like, this emotion will come through in the pages. Like, this is for something. It's okay. Like, deal with this and talk to somebody afterwards about it once you're done. But my fear was that some of these guys would be affected in a way to where, this would cause issues and stuff to bubble up to the surface.
Right. Right.
And with some of it, I mean, I got people coming back to me saying, man, like, I'm getting cravings. I'm, some of them in particular, olfactory smells. They were smelling smells from the battlefield, whether it be, something burning. You can fill in the blanks there. But in doing that and in facing some of that, it was done in such a way to where a lot of them were like, it was really good and it was therapeutic. And I always had, even the ones that were very standoffish, there's one in particular I'm thinking of to where he was very excited at first to help out. And then he must have talked to somebody who was, upset about it. He became very angry. And I got the nasty call of like, hey, F you, I'm not dealing with it. You're an asshole. Like, and I'm like, whoa, like, where is this coming from? And it pretty much came down to like, look, man, like, I don't know what you're dealing with inside, but what I'm hearing everything from you is that you want accuracy. And I've told you guys, and I'm willing to share this back and forth with you. And I want to develop this with you. And there's no other way to do that and stuff. And I explained the process and I'm like, look, it's up to you, but I can't do this fully without you. There's one in particular to where you are the only one there and I need your help. And we kind of signed off. And 3 months later, he kind of came back to me and he's like, man, you're right. I was dealing with a lot of stuff inside and I'm sorry. Let's sit down and do this. I've been dreading this call, but whatever the outcome and everything else, like, let's sit down and face it together. And we spent, oh man, it was definitely over 3 hours. I want to say it was closer to 5, like into the night. And there were tears shed, and there was things talked about. But in the end, after the call, he was just like, I'm really glad I did this. And thank you. And that meant the world to me. But also to be able to bring that stuff forward and stuff and have that help others, I mean, that alone is worth it right there. But then to have it help others and bring it forward. There was so much that went into this in talking with the families of the guys and then revisiting in my own head, like some of these places, and facing that. It was a really good experience, but even in pushing through that, it's not all easy.
No, I can imagine as I was reading it. And then, like I said, as someone who's not faced this, I several times had to stop and like suck in breath. And I thought how difficult this must have been, not only to go through it the first time, which I can't, but to continue to live it in your mind and then to force it out onto a paper. I know as an author, I often write scenes that are like close to my heart and I can feel emotion. And this is like far beyond anything I've ever tried. And so I can imagine that was like you said, probably both cathartic and terrifying, to have those kinds of emotions being pulled from you onto the page like that.
I definitely, I mean, it had me constantly trying to like make sure I even, told the wife and everything. I'm like, look, if I'm getting snappy and stuff, but I stayed in, I think a lot of it with staying in touch with the guys during it and talking with them directly actually made it a lot easier. Because we were really shouldering that burden together as opposed to
facing it alone. Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly.
All right. So in your press sheet, you state right up front that you're not an author. That this is not that being.
Oh, the author's note. Yes.
Yeah. On the author's note. Yeah. You said, no, I'm not an author. You're not an author, but you wrote this really incredible book. What do you have in mind for it? Like what when an author puts a book out, for me,
Mm-hmm.
my point for my book is, I'm trying to build an author base, and the things that I do, and you had a purpose for this book.
Yeah.
And it had to be something other than, I want to be an author, because you state you're not one. So what is the purpose, other than the healing that apparently you've gone through by writing it, and the healing that many of your members have gone through by you and them participating in the process? What do you want to have happen with this book?
I mean, so really a big part of it was sharing these stories that, again, like I had said before, there's stuff that's been out from the special operations community. So a lot of these conventional guys, they feel marginalized. They feel, oh, I didn't do anything cool. Or man, if these guys can write about this stuff, like my experience over there wasn't anything. And that's not at all what it is. I mean, yes, I've talked to some special operations guys and stuff, and they hear some of the stories from the things that happened over there, and they're just like, wait a minute, this is all in 1 year? Like, what? That doesn't happen over here. And they're right, honestly. But those experiences, a lot of the same stuff that we talk about in there is just echoed. It's echoed across the force. So it was to share, I mean, it was therapeutic on my own, but it was really to share that message, but it was to share it for everybody and get them to start talking, like, as a community within the veteran community. A lot of times these guys don't speak up or talk out because, like, nobody understands me. And it's like, I've seen through this too. I saw through another work as well, but people are listening. People want to hear this end, and they want to understand. So really, some of this is to bring out that understanding within people, but it's also for within the community. It's for us. It was originally really written for that boots on the ground soldier. I know we use that so much. They just beat the heck out of their boots on the ground, but this one really is. It's what separates something like this is you find a nonfiction about a battlefield. It's usually written by a general, and it's dry, and they were actually there. They're just writing it from these accounts and stuff. So where this is flipped around. This is flipped on its head. This is the guy on the ground looking up, saying, hey, why am I here? And I was able to get a bit of that larger picture from the general officers and staff that I was able to talk to along the way, which is phenomenal.
Right.
I have to say, like, being able to have access to that end was, and again, people ask me, like, how did you get a general to write your forward? And what a lot of them don't realize is that, General Hodges there, he was the RC South commander. He knows of these incidents. As a matter of fact, there was one of them in there it's called the 1508 incident that we responded to that had happened down the road from us, but he flew in to do the battle drill assessment on afterwards to find out, hey, what exactly happened? 8 people died in this incident. Why? What happened? Where was the breakdown? And when I started talking to, him and Petraeus about that overall battle picture on what was happening there, he started to realize, oh my God, I know exactly who you are.
Yeah.
And where you guys came from. Like, whoa, this is blowing my mind,
Right.
And
Right.
it was neat. And it was really cool too, to have someone at that level where you would never think he was tracking what the little guy was doing. They know. It's so wild. Those guys are, matter of fact, Petraeus knows, General Petraeus knows a good amount of the guys that were in Walter Reed. He stopped by and saw him, and like, he'll pull them out during events. One in particular, Jared Lemon, has said, like, yo, yeah, he's pulled me out of here before out of a crowd. Like, it's just crazy.
Right.
And these guys care, they do.
I think that's good for everyone to really understand that there is a camaraderie that actually, like, transcends the those levels. You've got your guys on the ground, and you got your generals up there, but in the end, you're all part of one brotherhood, sisterhood.
Yeah.
So yeah, I think that's great. So you mentioned that half of the people got a Purple Heart.
Yes.
That's a pretty incredible number.
Yeah.
In what time period are we talking?
So you have to look at too. Yeah, you're absolutely right. Like this portion was compressed. I mean, we started out in Helmand province. They were trying to get us into the Battle of Marja with the Marines and the Brits.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and then we ended up switching battle spaces into the Arghandab. So really, this is a period of 7-8 months, and that was the bulk of everything. I mean, some stuff happened in Helmand, but that was really what you would look at as your conventional type deployment. A lot of hurry up and wait, a
Yeah.
lot of just boring desert, and trying to make sure that you don't get complacent out there. To where this was so, I mean, it was so kinetic. There were portions, quite honestly, there was portions, and a lot of the guys will pop up too and be like, "Oh my God, I remember that," but I had completely forgotten. But just because of how the pace was, how breakneck this pace was out there, that you would get, if you had a chance to sleep, you would. It was just like, hey, I'm gonna get 2 or 3 hours. Myself and my platoon sergeant, have just not had the same sleep since then. We had, in those 8 months, there was an entire prosthetics ward over at Walter Reed. Like that was just everybody from from Two Fury. The thing, it was full. We filled up Walter Reed with just the amount of people that were losing to, these anti-personnel mines, and it was, absolutely insane. And again, it wasn't that, it was poor soldiering or anything. This was happening across the board.
Right.
Even task force and some of the soft forces that were operating out there, the exact same thing. Like those years were very,
Brutal.
very dangerous years in that region. That
Yeah.
surge into Kandahar was quite the thing.
So with a rate like that, essentially 1 out of every 2 people in the unit, right?
Yeah.
Were you wounded? You yourself?
Crazy enough. And this is at one point I kind of had to face that, like, well, it's only a matter of time, because I caught myself thinking to myself, like, all right, who's it going to be, while going out on patrol one day.
Right. Because I mean, you're down to 1 out of 2. It's me or him. Which one's it going to be? Right.
Yeah. And you have to look at my position in there was RTO. And so that's a radio, and you have to have a radio on the battlefield, and
Right.
we started to offset it, because we had another kid there that was out with us who was a part of the fires team, but like, so we kind of shared duties as opposed to putting 2 people with radios out there. We shared duties and like supplemented because of how crazy the pace was. But that was the other guys that were there, is Paul Martinick, and then occasionally we had Sergeant Jason Spotted Horse out there with us. But those type of odds, yes, you're more than likely to hit one, and to face that and go, well, you know what, man, like you just have to stop thinking about that. You can't get in your head about it, because quite honestly, if you do that, you're not doing your job.
Right.
You're not thinking correctly. So you had to back off and say, you know what, I am already dead. It's only a matter of time until this catches up with me. But until then, I'm going to do the best job I can do for as long as I can do. And crazy enough, I mean, hey, here I am. I ended up not wounded. There was, a specific instance, the time after Christmas. There's the day after Christmas when Specialist Jason Johnson was hit, that everybody else there was knocked over in that IED explosion, except for me. And it's just unexplainable. I have no idea how I got out of there without a scratch. I'm extremely thankful.
Right. Right.
But maybe it was for the reason of bringing this story out. I don't know the full purpose. I'm thankful and grateful I'm here and am able to, do the things that I'm doing right now.
Right.
And sometimes you just never know.
So I'm curious, you brought up purpose, which, leads me into a great question, which is, do you feel like you were saved for a purpose? Like coming back from a deployment like that, where so many people were wounded and killed and, friends and et cetera. And now you're here and you're alive. And, I know you're married with kids. And do you feel like you need to be doing something big Do you know what I'm saying? Like, do you feel
Oh, I know exactly what
do you feel
weight
it? Do you feel a
there.
compulsion to somehow like live not only your life but the life of those who didn't get to? Is that
Absolutely.
I don't even know if I'm making sense.
No, you're making complete sense. Like that
Okay.
is literally what I know I've thought it kind of cheesy because I have said that before. I've said I feel like I need to live double because these other guys out there have not made the way forward. So if they haven't had the chance, but I've been pushed forward, then those times in where I might feel bad about myself or kind of take it easy and then catch myself and go, oh, hey, man, like, what are you doing? Nothing. That's right. We can get out there and push on it and like go. And I know we need those moments
Right.
of chill, but it's led me to do a lot of stuff. And like, when I start to either feel bad or might slow down on things, that's how I look at it is I go, hey, like, all right, but how would they think about that? Go. And it kind of gives you a bit of that accountability to push forward and to really, make yourself the best version of human that you possibly can. And I think that really it's been the right way to look at things. And I am here for a purpose for sure. Again, I'm still searching on that end.
I think though that it's the search that makes us who we are.
It is. It's the journey for
I don't
sure.
think most people ever really settle on the thing. They settle on a thing, and then that leads them to the next thing, which then
Yeah.
leads them to the next thing. I don't know that we necessarily have a singular purpose. I think we have,
Oh yeah.
you know what I
Oh.
mean? I think that we
Oh
have
yeah.
maybe like an identity that we're pushing forward, and then that's going to lead us to many different things that you can do. So like you said with this book, you started with a book,
Yeah.
but you're also doing a lot of other things. You had an event. Tell me a little bit about this event that you had
Oh
on
man.
Veterans Day.
This was it was such a good it was a good time. It was a good experience. Getting what a lot of the guys that were there, afterwards, they're like, "Oh, that was a really good event." If they had known the amount of scrambling in the background that was done. Wow. Like leading up to it was nuts. But so this particular event was held by really what felt like going home for a lot of this stuff. And the Airborne and Special Operations Museum down in Fayetteville, the way that they got integrated into the story, it really has to do with the guys, but also the front cover of the book. What a lot of people don't realize is the cover of the book, that's a real picture. That's a picture from the battlefield. So in this picture, they're pulling a flag out of some rubble, and it's a 1,000-pound bomb that the enemy, what had happened was there's a 1,000-pound bomb the enemy had placed inside of a vehicle, and they ran this vehicle at speed towards the entry point to where the guys at little town called Dialkache, they were staying out of there. It kind of seemed to be the epicenter of where all this stuff was happening. So really, the area where we were operating was so saturated with enemy movement that we ended up pulling our company apart and splitting up into platoon levels. So there's 3rd platoon over at Combat Outpost Ware, and we're over at Combat Outpost Johnston, and the other group is over at Cop Brunk. Same thing, Combat Outpost Cop. So they're at Cop Brunk, and they're operating from there, just small patrols and stuff, constant presence. And this car comes barreling in and detonates. And it was so big. I was actually, so we're over a click away at Cop Johnson. We heard the explosion. The shockwave literally threw the door open from the radio room, the talk we were in. So the communications hut. And I'm like, what the heck? And I run to the door and open it up, and there's a mushroom cloud coming up from that direction. I'm like, oh boy, someone hit something. I wasn't sure exactly what had happened. I'm like, hey, you know, Sergeant Hill is in the back. You know, what the heck was that? I'm like, I don't know. Like, I'm going to watch the TAC chat. I'm going to see what's going on the radio. We'll monitor. I don't want to get on the net yet and see what's happening, but there's no word. And it took about, I mean, it was like 2 minutes. And then all of a sudden, one of the guys from there he climbed on top of one of the roofs with a handheld radio, and he's calling in that they had just been hit. And during this, I mean, we're talking a good amount of these guys were buried alive, and you could hear them screaming underneath the rubble. And they're extricating these people. And the person I got the story from that I present from there, and I was a little weird about presenting it because this particular story wasn't from our platoon, but it was something that I felt really needed to be in this book just because of how extreme it was. So I actually went and found one of the former first platoon members that had been there, and started talking to him about it. So Specialist Brian Erickson. And I had no idea until we started talking that he had been at Ground Zero during 9/11 as well. And here's this guy who was a New Jersey firefighter who finds himself now on the battlefield of Afghanistan doing the same type of recovery ops that he did back in 9/11 and pulling these guys out from underneath the rubble and the dirt, as well as reacting to possible follow-on ambush,
Right.
And just everything else that's happening around a whirlwind of what happens in combat, basically. And after they pulled everyone out, and after they had found the dead Afghan children that had been buried alive buried in there, they were killed in the process, unfortunately. They came across the flag, and it just didn't sit right with them. Here's this flag underneath this, and they began the process of pulling it out. And as they're pulling it out, someone, saw that camera pouch, and they snapped this picture. And it really became something that exemplified those feelings over there, that feeling of like, you can beat us up and you can knock us down, but you're not stopping us. We're here, and we're here to stay. And, they pulled that flag out and flew it back up over the outpost, in sort of that spirit of the 82nd Airborne. Really, they have a poster out there that dates back to World War II. Hey, this is the 82nd Airborne, and this is as far the bastards are going.
Right.
But after putting this cover together and whatnot, and putting the concept out there, Brian contacted me, and he goes, "Hey, Will, I have that flag that's on the cover." And I'm like, "Wait, what?" And I didn't quite understand exactly. And he's like, "No, when we left, like, I took that flag with us, and I have it at my house. Is there anything we can do with this?" And that is how the Airborne and Special Operations Museum down in Fayetteville came to be. It was when we had come back, the unit bought a paver out front that the guys that we had lost over there's a dedicated paver out front with their names in it.
Mm-hmm.
And stuff. And so there's already, I remember very vividly, being out front after we had come back, like during this dedication to that. And I remember that ceremony with our first sergeant and the guys all around us. And it really made this thing special, and it made it like coming home. And to be able to have that for the book launch event for this, to dedicate that particular flag to the museum and to the DoD historical archives to be preserved, as well as a bunch of the other gear. I put the pictures up online of Lee's backpack in this particular magazine that was in his weapon that got hit with a ball bearing, narrowly very possibly narrowly killing him, killing Sergeant Lee. And just the different artifacts and the outpouring that these guys have had in order to bring the picture of this thing and this story to the American public. You can go down and see this thing on display at the museum. And that, to me, and for these guys to put this book on their shelves and be able to show their kids, and their kids to be able to bring their kids and be like, that's what Grandpa did.
Right.
That right there, that's huge.
It is huge. I am I am thrilled that this has turned into something more than just a book for you. That
Same.
it is, turning into something. It's almost got a life of its own, which is
I
great.
This has been the full intention the entire way. This is like when I initially sat down and I looked and I was like, all right, what do authors do? All right, they promote off their name all the time.
Right.
I was like, okay, we're not going to do that. Like, we are going to create a movement, because a person's fallible, but if you create something like this and like share these stories and stuff, I can guarantee, and I already know, there's more coming. There's actually the company that was across the river from us, Charlie Company. They're a good 70,000 words in at this point. And so, like, I mean,
Fantastic.
it's
Fantastic.
To me, it's so exciting. And then also to have been through the process myself, there's going to be workshops coming, in order to be like, hey guys, this is how you bring your stuff out. Or even if they're like, I don't have that amount of stuff, but I want to share my story, up on the official website, there's a wall of stories, and there's already been people to have submitted like, hey, this is my poetry and stuff. And I tell people, please submit stuff, man. It's behind a wall because there's certain things that don't belong up there, but I will work with you. If something comes through and it's just not right, I'll work with you to edit it too, in order to be like, hey, look, that might not be respectful, but what about coming from
this angle
way?
Or what if we just changed up a little right here and
and these stories need to come out. And I really think that through this, they will be. And it's been amazing. It's been such a rewarding journry. It really has.
That story, as you were telling me about the flag and then flying it again, I get very choked. My grandfather fought in World War II. My dad was in the Air Force. My husband was 25 years in the military. Military is a lot to me. And the flag is a representation of all of that. And so it chokes me
I can
up.
see it.
I just took my husband to a Veterans Day. Our church was essentially honoring those people who had been veterans. And I told you my husband has brain cancer. And so going to things is a little tough for him right now. And he went, I couldn't have stopped him. He was going to go to that thing if he had to crawl there. And I got him to that event. And the presenter did he just told a story about a World War II story is what he was telling. And it was he did a wonderful job. And then he said something about, I love this flag. And then he stopped.
Mm-hmm.
And you could see the Adam's apple bumping up and down. And he could not get any more words out. And I look over at my husband, who's got the same thing. And I'm looking around the room at all of the other vets that were sitting there, who are being honored that day. And everybody is feeling that same thing. Then I start looking at wives and daughters, and we're all doing the same thing. And it's I want to see that. I want everyone who lives in this amazing country to feel that and to understand what people like you and my husband and all other vets from all services through all times have done to, keep our country free and great and all of the things that we say about our country.
Yeah. And I mean, really though, too, is the support and stuff. I know a lot of the guys and stuff from Vietnam, it was very different for them.
Yeah.
They didn't have the support. And that's been one thing that I have to say is that really Americans and stuff, I think, have kind of realized that the situations of Vietnam that they looked at and, the outcry against it was not against the troops. It was the people in the government. And I think that people have kind of come to terms on that end and the support behind
that. Yeah, they may not support a particular action by the military, but they don't blame those in the military for the action that they had to perform.
And they're supporting the intention
of
the troops as opposed to and I think that's been huge.
Yeah. So real quickly, you stated that the VA has declared the unit to be at extraordinary risk.
Yes.
What does that mean, number one? And number two, what's being done?
So, quite honestly, I don't know everything behind. And actually, I do have a sit down coming up at some point with someone who was they were like the national suicide director with the VA and stuff, and to really talk about like, what does this mean with the extraordinary risk? Like, what are these labels? How do these, because I've never even heard about that before until started getting into this. And I'm like, well, what do you mean? I'm part of some unit that was like
whoa, yeah.
flagged, like,
Yeah.
well, yeah. And that's really honestly kept me, it keeps me in check in where I look at my own situation. I try to be mindful, like, hey, all right, so if I'm declared at this, and we have quite a few suicides from that particular unit. I think the battalion, the amount at this point is up to like 30 people.
Wow.
Which, after having survived something like this, to me is a damn shame that you still have people dying from the effects on what happened over
Right.
there, and it shouldn't be. But so they're trying to figure things out. They are trying to put forth the efforts, but I know a lot of this stuff comes through private organizations and whatnot. And I know one in particular that was started by one of the wives that was over in this unit, the Independence Fund. They started doing something called Operation Resiliency, and it was about, our unit was the pilot program for this particular program. And they brought us all in. They flew us all down to Charlotte, North Carolina. And a lot of those guys, that's why they chose that location. A lot of them were still based around North Carolina.
Mm-hmm.
But where you see a traditional military reunion type thing, you might see like 20 people there, maybe if you're lucky, if they're really tight. This is 125 paratroopers descending down on Charlotte. This was something that it was wild to see, but to get together in that pure capacity, to face these sort of things, because they brought people in, but there was also VA clinicians to the side. So it was like hey, this peer group is good, and it's to get you guys start talking amongst one another. But when and if this stuff bubbles to the surface, there's someone there to talk to, as well as it being to where a lot of these guys they won't open up to a clinician because they haven't been there, and they look at it that these people don't understand.
Right.
They might not understand the actual instance that happened, but they do understand how the brain works and how trauma works. So sometimes it's getting someone else, like myself, that's had really good luck with the VA, to say, hey, look, man, like, these guys aren't against you. They do care. And there are methods that work here. Like, why don't you come over and talk to them? It's
Right.
worked for me, or even just the fact that through this exposure to these different methods that these psychologists and stuff use, I'm learning too during that, and during this project has been huge in how to talk with some of these guys and stuff. If I get that phone call, like how to talk someone down off a ledge or talk some sense and be like, look, man, like, you're going through something right now, but you need to stop. You just need to take that tactical pause, just like you would on the battlefield. Listen to what's going on around you. There is always a way out. There's always a way forward. And it's programs like this, like Operation Resiliency, that show these other guys, maybe by, with, or through, other guys and stuff that are there. And it's been incredible to see and be part of. And really, I'm so excited to see where some of these projects are going and where some of these possibilities, because we're living in a time to where people do care.
They do.
The eyes are on this.
Yeah.
And it's just the outpouring and stuff has been incredible. And I it's something that I want to be part of. And, here we are.
I talked with my husband this morning, and I said, he got out, he went in 71, got out in 96.
Yeah.
And I asked him about, like mental health type programs. And he kind of shook his head like this. And he said, I mean,
Nothing.
lots has changed since I was in, but there wasn't a lot going on at that time. And so hopefully, in those last 25 years, things have changed, at least some, that maybe we're moving forward a little better. I'm hoping.
Oh, we definitely are.
Yeah.
I have to say is that, like, one thing that I have to say about the VA is that any of the problems that I usually experience have to do with the upper echelons, or the schedulers, where it gets caught up in bureaucracy, to where the people at the ground level, the actual, nurses and doctors and
Yeah.
surgeons and stuff, are phenomenal.
Right.
Quite honestly,
Right.
the VA has some absolutely incredible facilities and people that work there. So, like, when they're like, "Oh, the VA is garbage," I'm like, "No, no, no, no. The VA is not garbage. It's possible maybe the system within the VA might need some
Some
tweaking,
tweaking, yeah.
but
And
unless you get
there has been
involved."
some tweaking. I know that
Yeah.
initially, when my husband was going through trying to get a disability rating, the first time that happened, it was a 2-year process, and the second time that happened, it was a 30-day process.
Yeah.
So things
Big.
are definitely improving, without a doubt. But
Yeah.
that 2-year process, and that was a 2 years just to be seen,
Ooh,
just to be seen.
that's
And so
crazy.
things are definitely improving. I hope that the mental health part is something that they're really focusing on, because, reading this book helps me to understand even more that what you saw, what you had to do, what you came home to, what you're still living with.
Yeah.
War doesn't end when the bullets stop flying.
No, that would bring me into something that somebody said who was reviewing it, who was a professional writer, and he contacted me and said, "Did you notice that in certain periods of trauma, the tense in which you wrote this went from past to present?" I didn't catch that.
Right.
And
You were reliving it.
really,
You were
and that's
reliving it. You were
yes,
there.
a
You were
lot of
there
these
again.
guys,
Yeah.
a lot of it, and they do every day. And that's something for people to be aware of, is like, these guys, sometimes the battlefield does not leave these guys. And
Right.
sometimes they are living it every day. That hypervigilance is there, and they're not even aware of it. And I mean, I wasn't even so much, but in slowing down and writing this thing and realizing, whoa, you might not have thought that you had anything, but there's things
But it's
there. You
still
just
there.
never slowed
Yeah.
down enough to realize it. Yeah.
Well, I think that when a person has trauma, and we all experience trauma in some form or another,
Oh,
that
for
that
sure.
we can heal it to a point, but there's still what I call, swamp gas buried up under there, and certain things happen, and yeah, up to the
Yep.
surface it
Bubbles to
comes.
the
And so,
surface. Yes.
for you, and when you were writing this book, there was some swamp gas down there that you weren't even aware of, and it came out in present tense. And I think that's very interesting that
Oh,
happened.
for sure. For sure.
So, what is next for Will Yeske?
What is next? Well, crazy enough, I guess sometimes I do things backwards. Um, I do, because, like, literally, I wrote a book about transitioning from the military service into the civilian life, but also, like, paying attention to these frameworks and different factors of success I had along the way. Like, um, one of the things was, I blew up 70 plus pounds, like a lot of us do when we left, and it had to do with a lot of, like, life habits change. You're not working out first thing in the morning. No one's over you about this type of thing. You don't really have to. So you're trying to think of, like, hey, you're packing your time in, but it's not really with the right things being on the focus.
Right.
And in and that was actually one of the things, is one of the guys that was on that deployment, Sergeant Jason Spotted Horse, he had come down with Lou Gehrig's, and I watched him kind of waste away, and it put in me that, like, hey man, like, you were exposed to a lot of the same things that he
Yeah.
was.
Yeah.
What happens if this instance happens with you? Do you want to be out of shape and not prepared for your body to take a hit like that? Or do you want to have the best chance possible for your kids and for the people around you that care about you? So I mean, that led me to, in a year's time, losing 70 pounds and getting back into shape, or navigating through the civilian sector within school. A lot of guys don't use their GI Bill. Like, I think the percentage is just abysmal on who's using these services that are available to them. And it's like,
Right.
that could be your tactical pause in between, and put that education under your belt, you know, don't
So
be
that you
scared of
have
going back to
your next
school.
step, right? Right.
Yeah. So it's looking like it's very possible. I mean, I wrote this thing 5 years ago. My old CO wanted me to put it out, and I'm like, I don't know just yet. But now it's pretty clear to see that that's probably what should
So
go
what
out
you're
there.
telling me is Will Yeske, who claims that he's not an author, is becoming one? Is that what you're trying to say?
Slowly yet surely, yet also probably rather rapidly.
I
Yes, that is,
see.
I
I
guess
see.
it's
I
part of the
see.
repertoire. Race
Okay.
car driver and author extraordinaire.
Well, fantastic. Fantastic. So, how can listeners who want to learn more about Damn the Valley, anything else that you're doing, how can they find you and where should they go to learn more?
Yeah. Good way to start would be the official website. You got damnthevalleybook.com. You can go there and it has all the different, the various branches off the social. But I mean, we're on Instagram, and the rest of them at Damn the Valley Book. It's what Instagram, Facebook, TikTok, YouTube.
You
They're
name it, you got it.
It's across the board. They're all out
Right.
there. I know that it's a little different. So like YouTube, it's actually kind of neat because like YouTube, I can put some of these long news segments that were actually aired by, I think one of them was NBC, Bill Neely. He came
Yeah.
out there and spent a week with us, and this footage is out there and like guys see that and they're like, but I mean, I reached out to the reporters and he sent me the raw footage of things out there. I'm like, man, like yeah, so damnthevalleybook.com. And you should be able to find everything that you need to find through there. I mean, they're all, it's almost like a Linktree plus.
Right.
But you can get the book through Amazon, Barnes and Noble. I know Barnes and Noble was supposed to be out on the shelves, and these copies seem to be flying off so quickly that Barnes doesn't have any in store anymore. Bookshop.org was sold out on day one. The publisher was sold out a week before this thing even kicked off. So, and I've watched it, go into back order at Amazon at one point, and I was like, whoa, but the response has been nothing short of phenomenal. It's been great. But I hope that the people reading this and the people interested in it, like that, it's for you guys. I honestly, God, it doesn't talk to your library. If it's like, I can't afford a $35 book, get it into your library.
Right.
Everybody deserves to read it. I wish I could give them away, honestly.
And
It's not how
someday
it
when
works.
you're super wealthy, that may be happening, right?
Yeah. Well, hey, I mean, that's one of the things during doing this is crowdsourcing. For every 2 author copies sold, it's not for me. I take those books and I send one book. I'm compiling a pile for the 150 guys that were there, and when I get to the 150, they're getting sent out to them. So for every 2 author copies I sell, one of them, that enables me to give one copy to the guys and say,
one of the guys.
hey man, thank you for being a part. And like, I really appreciate it.
That's wonderful. Well, thank you so much for being with us, Will. So this has been William Yeske, author of Damn the Valley. And we're super excited that he was able to be with us today. Thank you.
Terry, thank you so much for having me. I really appreciate it. Like, honestly, thank you so much.
Thank you for listening to Online for Authors, where I, Terry M. Brown, author of character-driven fiction and host of the podcast, introduce readers to characters they'd love to invite to lunch. Tune in next Tuesday for another podcast episode.